Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to stately Vaughan Manor, where, well, it's still October at the time that I'm recording this, the time when we should be talking about monsters and creatures, horror, things like that. I haven't talked enough about that this month, I've realized. So today I'm going to be talking about a science fiction novel that features creatures that are technically monsters and it's had a great influence on horror, actually, which if you read the book, you can totally see that. And the book I'm talking about today is The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham, a science fiction novel that was released in 1951 and was a very popular novel, actually. It's John Wyndham's most popular novel, I believe. The Day of the Triffids. The end of the world is brought about, or at least the end of our civilization is brought about by, well, some interesting things. In this story, it features big shambling plants. So in the future, or at least the future from 1951, we have these big shambling plants called the Triffids, which have been, well, they were probably bioengineered, possibly by the Russians, and they escaped out into the wild, and people have cultivated them. We've started to cultivate these creatures, these big shambling plants, even though they're venomous and dangerous. But we're cultivating them because they have an oil, they produce an oil which is very valuable. And so we say, what the heck? Let's produce a billion of these things because they produce oil, no matter how dangerous they might be. I mean, why not? That's the kind of thing that we do. So to produce this oil, we we cultivate these strange, shambling, venomous triffids. So that's one of the things that causes the destruction of human society. The other thing is a possible meteor shower. There's something going on in the sky one night, which produces all of these strange lights in the sky. So there's this bizarre meteor shower, maybe, or something. Anyway, there's something in the sky that creates this fantastic light show. So everybody goes out to look at it. It goes on for a while, this light show. So everybody goes out and takes a look in the sky to look at this thing that's going on out in space, out in the sky. Now this is, you might think, well, would everybody do this? Well, this is at the time when, if you heard this happening, you weren't just like looking down, at Instagram. Now, if this happened, they'd be like, hey, there's this thing going on in the sky. Really? Well, let me find it here on the Instagram. I'll find it eventually. And no one would look up. But back in these days, back in the 50s, nobody had iPhones, and everybody did look up in the sky, or would, if this sort of thing happened. Unfortunately, if you did that, you'd go blind. So everybody who looks up in the sky and sees this thing went blind. So we've got two different things going on. We've got the cultivation of the Triffids. We have this event in the sky which causes everybody who looks at it to go blind. These two things cause the end of human society because everybody's blind, everybody's freaking out. And while that happens, the Triffids get out. The incredible, dangerous, mindless, shambling Triffids. And, with almost everybody blind, they could just roll in and, kill folks. So we've got that going on. So this is written in the 1950s when people were very concerned with the end of society and the possible end of the world, which is really understandable if you consider that we had just been through World War II and everybody had been affected by World War II, and a lot of people were facing the potential end of their society, the end of their world. World War II was a tremendously traumatic experience, and it ended with a weapon that could potentially destroy the world. So, you know, people had a lot on their minds, and one of those things was, you know, the end of society and how we would deal with that and how it might happen. And this book deals with that. It deals with people trying to deal with the end of the world, basically. This has had a lot of influence on things like zombie films, especially. Just replacing the giant, shambling, dangerous plants with zombies. So you have a film like 28 Days Later and the television show and the comic book The Walking Dead both start actually just like this starts. This starts with a biologist who works with the Triffids, but he had been blinded by some venom from the Triffids. So he's recovering in the hospital. And while he's recovering, and his eyes are covered by bandages because of this venomous attack, while he's recovering in the hospital, that's when this light show goes on in the sky. So he misses that. And this novel begins that way, and it has a really good beginning. Chapter 1 is The End Begins. And the first sentence is, when a day you happen to know is Wednesday starts off by sounding like a Sunday, there is something seriously wrong somewhere. Because everything's quiet outside, you know. Something's wrong. He can tell, even though his eyes are bandaged. So he gets his bandages off. He goes outside to find a world changed, where everybody's blind. Most everybody's blind. There, of course, are some people who can still see, who missed the light show. But most people are blind. And now the Triffids are out. And this causes tremendous trouble. And this book is all about all of the terrible things that happen after that. And how our hero and the people he comes across, some of them are bad, some of them are good. We see a lot of the things that we see later done over and over again in shows like The Walking Dead and in films and in zombie films, where you have a bunch of people running around, some taking advantage of the situation and being awful, and other people just trying to put society back together. A lot of the things that you see in those later films, those later horror films, were originally in this book. A lot of stuff seems taken right out of this book. So this is a really influential book as far as that kind of thing goes. You've got the Triffids as big, shambling, mindless monsters are interesting in themselves. This is an interesting end-of-the-world scenario. And like I said, it has a lot of those things, but it's not a completely bleak book, in that it's not all about people being awful. I mean, for example, if you watch The Walking Dead, you think that if something terrible like this happens, everybody's just going to be terrible, and it's all going to be a Lord of the Flies nightmare. And a lot of people are going to be like that. But there are also going to be people who are helpful and who want society to continue and will help each other. And so you get that in this book too. So this is a bit of a more well-rounded story as far as that is concerned. It's interesting, and you should read it. It's a great science fiction classic. And even though it is a science fiction classic, I think it is one of those books that a lot of people haven't read. And you should, because it's great. It's an excellent science fiction novel. And like I said, it's had a tremendous influence on horror. So there you go. And it's an excellent read, just all by itself. So yeah, Day of the Triffids, John Wyndham. You should read this book. That's all I have to say about it today. I will catch you tomorrow from here at Stately Vaughan Manor.